October surprises are just as common as we saw the leaves changing and death and taxes. People expect that. But in my conversations with people in my home state of Georgia, they are not concerned with what Herschel Walker did in 2009. They're looking at what he is promising to do as a U.S. senator.
He's not promising to do anything, Alice. Let's be honest about this. What we're saying is character doesn't count in a Senate seat. What we're saying is competence doesn't count because nobody's voting, right? I mean, and that's what's really dangerous, because if you go down that slippery slope and you say that character doesn't count, competence doesn't count, telling the truth doesn't count, what you're really saying is party above country, power above everything. And that's antithetical to the idea of the Senate and to the ideals that our democracy actually depends upon, which is enough people saying the person over the party.
In a contested conversation, a Republican strategist is put on the defensive.
Go ahead, Alice. What people are focusing on are the policies. They look at what Herschel...
What policies?
There's no policy here.
His policies with regard to fighting crime.
So he wants to fight crime. Okay, who doesn't? Next.
You're a person of faith. You got an actual reverend or someone who lies about getting an abortion while being anti-abortion on the surface. Isn't that, to the extent that faith impacts political decisions, I'm not clear why some Georgia voters who are people of faith wouldn't say, given the overturning of Roe, you know what, the actual reverend might be a better emissary of faith. The excuse that, oh, well, it doesn't matter because I'm voting for the policies is just not credible in the case of Herschel Walker.
So what we saw was Alice Stewart, who, according to her Chiron, is a Republican strategist who is paid to go on CNN and pretty much do this song and dance. And now she is defending Herschel Walker. And to understand where she is coming from and what sort of viewpoints she holds, and the Walker admission will probably tell you a little bit about that. But here are her thoughts on the ganj.
I happen to think that marijuana is a gateway drug. I'm not a big advocate for legalizing marijuana.
Drugpolicy.org notes, research shows that marijuana could more accurately be described as a terminus drug because the vast majority of people who use marijuana do not go on to use other illicit drugs. What Stewart and many other Republicans are doing is going back to the Reagan administration's renewed war on drugs. So this tells you she is the classic Republican who really believes that the Reagan administration's fight with the war on drugs was merited when we know the repercussions that many underserved and oppressed communities faced because of that president. But there's more. She would write in an opinion piece for CNN, as a pro-life social conservative, I receive my fair share of criticism for supporting Donald Trump for president. She wrote of Justice Samuel Alito's draft opinion on the overturning of Roe, and then put in this: people like me who voted for Trump in the belief that the Supreme Court ought to be our highest priority should feel vindicated. Speaking of the Supreme Court,
the legitimacy of the court was undermined when they wouldn't take up Merrick Garland. And you'll remember that McConnell said it was because it was during an election year. And you remember Lindsey Graham pledging that if a vacancy came open during an election year in 20, that he wouldn't vote for, they wouldn't take up a nominee. They've stolen 2 seats.
Recall Al Franken on CNN last month.
Just to throw a little accuracy in some of what Al said there. Look, the Merrick Garland was held up because we had a divided government. We had a Democrat in the White House, and we had Republicans in control of.
That's not what was said. That's not what McConnell said.
But that's the way historically this has been. When you're in close to an election year and you have divided government.
That's not the way it's been historically done.
Yes, and when you have divided government, there typically is an inclination to.
Tell me when this happened before.
When
it happened before.
Merrick Garland is certainly one. When there's a divided government.
No, before Merrick Garland.
They're not moving forward.
Tell me when this happened before.
Al, I'm telling you, this is what the Mitch McConnell
Tell me when it
said.
happened before.
I can't.
You said this is what happened historically. Tell me when it happened before.
Look, this is the way that the Republicans
When?
went. Like, I can't give you an exact example of when this happened
No,
in the past.
because you know
but
why
I
you
can
can't?
Tell you,
because it hadn't happened before.
Seeing through Stewart's lies on a national broadcast. And yet, a quote she gave of the Vice President, Kamala Harris, would read, "It's the obvious attempt to evade a question, and she often gets away with it." I mean this with the utmost respect, because I understand where certain people come from with their viewpoints. I completely understand it. However, there are panelists who check Stewart, which is a good thing. But each time I have seen her get put on camera, and again, I say this respectfully, every time I've seen her get put on camera and on those airwaves, it is to posture to modern day conservatives. It is to evade any criticism and simply garner approval within those inner circles that she is in. I remember seeing in that opinion piece, she spoke quite highly of the Federalist Society. She has spoken quite highly of the former president, Donald Trump. She has spoken quite highly of many other conservatives like that. So she is put out there with this new leadership to do one thing and one thing only, and we are seeing it before our very eyes. When the FBI went to search Trump's Mar-a-Lago home, Stewart argued the former president was singled out. She then said, "If this can happen to the former president, then it can happen to me. Who is next?" In an article, Daryl Lucas wrote of Stewart's background. In her previous life, before signing on as a CNN contributor and a fellow at Harvard's John F. Kennedy Institute of Politics, Stewart worked as a communications advisor for several Republican campaigns and conservative groups. However, she is most proud of her tenure at Concerned Women for America, one of the oldest religious right groups. So if a president revels in degrading women, mocks the disabled, claims even mild criticism is fake news, churned out by enemies of the people, condones violence, spews blatantly racist yacht horns, and lies over 30,000 times, all of that is okay as long as he appoints the right judges. If you're willing to say that with a straight face, you are as morally bankrupt as Trump, wrote Lucas. The point being, we understand why she's placed there and what she is supposed to do. What I would personally prefer, and I know many others would personally prefer who follow this sort of stuff, is basically what former NRA spokeswoman Dana Loesch said, who has proven herself to be a monstrosity time and time again, which is, I don't care if Herschel Walker paid for an abortion. I don't care if Herschel Walker aborted baby eagles. I want control of the Senate. That's it. That's the ball game right there. So all this, I don't want to say fakeness, but all this posturing that's going on and saying that you really care about this, but then when someone goes against what you proclaim to be all of your values over and over again, and you still say you're going to support him, curtains.